Hello, my name is Voya and welcome to my deep guide. If you're researching the e-paper market and you're looking for a non-frontlit monochromatic 10-ish inch e-paper tablet, likelihood is that these three, plus the AI paper as well, are probably going to be on your radar. The reason why AI paper is not in this comparison is simply because that the review loan unit that I have received was a prototype. I do not have a production unit with me at hand to test, which is something that I would need to have in order for it to receive all of the latest updates, which are an important part of the AI paper because it has received, to my knowledge, significant upgrades and improvements, some of which directly relate to image quality and display performance. So it would be an unfair comparison to just put on the prototype AI paper that I have here with one of the oldest firmware versions and present to you, hey, this is how AI paper functions. I will reach out to the manufacturers and see if I can get a production review loan device to actually test it out and then give you the results of that device as well, because I know some people are interested in it and would justifyingly put it in a comparison of this type. So with that in mind, these are the three other devices that you're most likely going to be focusing on. We have the Boox Go 10.3, we have the Supernote Manta or the A5X2, and we have the good old Remarkable 2. If you like the work that I do and you would like to support that independence in work, you can head on over to mydeepguide.com/shop, where you can find high quality e-paper and template products for your e-paper devices. MDO or My Daily Organizer is a workbook to help you organize all of your personal or professional yearly, quarterly, monthly, weekly, daily needs. And it is a completely interlinked workbook, making it an extremely powerful addition to any of your e-paper devices. MMP or My Deep Guide Meeting Planner is also a hyperlinked workbook focused on helping you simplify, centralize, and organize all of your meeting planning needs, allowing you seamless navigation between different meetings from the meeting index page, and with each meeting having the ability to have individual agenda and notes. You can also find My Deep Guide Curated Templates, which is a collection of very carefully crafted notebook templates. What makes MDG Curated Templates different, all of them are pixel perfect for the device screen size that you are using them on. This is why there are so many different variations, so that you can choose the one that fits your device perfectly. These templates also maintain a universal 8mm line spacing standard and 4mm grid spacing standard. Purchasing any of these products will enhance your productivity and simplify your organization. You also directly support independence of My Deep Guide. Today I'm not going to be doing a full-on comparison of everything regarding these devices. Like the previous couple of videos, I am employing the Display Analysis Framework methodology, or the DAF, and I'm solely focusing on the display performance and image quality between these three devices. And while other aspects are very, very important in all of these devices, the display performance and image quality, that is the thing that you're interacting with mostly, be it for e-reader, e-note taker, or e-tablet needs, and as such it's one of the most important aspects of these devices. Display Analysis Framework methodology is something that I'm developing on my own, simply because we do not have a language or system of matrices to objectively measure and compare many different aspects and qualities of display panels on these devices. And it's not just display panels, because three devices can use the exact same display panel and you will be getting different results, because it depends on how that display panel is utilized, what's in front of it, etc., etc. The AF methodology is not yet fully finished, but it is in its final kind of rollout testing stage, and these videos are a part of me testing it out, putting it through its paces and seeing where the weaknesses are so that I can patch them up and find ways to handle and identify problematic edge case scenarios. As such, it's possible that the numbers that you see as final scores in these early videos and early use of the DAF methodology may change by the time it's fully finalized. But the differences that we're going to be seeing are going to be very, very marginal and maybe just numerical. But the relationship between the devices and how they compare to each other, that is something that shouldn't change drastically. But I wanted to mention that to you so that you can keep it in mind in case that you are from the future. And hopefully now there's a full-on finished DAF methodology in place with a comparison tool on the website and stuff, and then you're running into this older video and it's like, hey, the numbers are different. Well, that's why. All right, without further ado, let us commence the testing process. All right, so let's set them up, and we're gonna be starting with the Remarkable 2 versus Go 10.3, and we're versus Supernote Manta, or the A5X2. And starting with Remarkable 2, we've already seen on the previous comparison between different Remarkables that it's performing quite okay in standard fonts. Thin fonts are a little bit more difficult, especially much more difficult with the 6-point size and stepping down to 50% blackness. However, the thick fonts are handled nice and cleanly with minimal amount of bleed through. Moving on to Boox Go 10.3, which has a 300 ppi screen, and immediately we can see the difference in clarity of the characters here, because they are far crisper, and we can see that the rendering at paler colors is a lot more consistent and basically better handled than it is on the Remarkable 2, because in general Remarkable, for whatever reason, is calibrated in a really strange way that it doesn't really produce black colors. It's just very pale even when the content is supposed to be black. Thin fonts are rendered nicely on the Go 10.3, although at size 10 we are starting to see some inconsistencies here. 6-point is rendered nicely, perfectly legible, and stepping down to thin fonts at 50%, at size 10 and 16 it's good, but here at 6 points we are having a false positive skew here. This is something that I'm still working on resolving, because you can clearly see that readability is better here than here. However, currently the algorithm, when the fonts become too pale, it says like, hey, I'm just gonna count this noise back as well and artificially inflate the results so that it's all good. Woohoo! So we're going to keep that in mind, but the 6-point font doesn't really weigh in that much in the final scores. So while there's going to be a positive skew, it's going to be a slight one. Thick fonts are rendered nice and crisp with minimal amount of bleed between them. Supernote Manta is handling the rendering of standard fonts nicely across the board. So regardless of which type of color you have, it's handling it very well, maintaining the readability even on the 6-point size in an excellent way. Thin fonts at 100% are very legible, and we can see that Supernote is able to maintain full kind of saturated blackness of the thin fonts, something that neither Remarkable nor the Go 10.3 were able to. And even when stepping down to 50% of blackness on a thin font and 6-point size, we can see that the Supernote screen is maintaining impressive level of legibility here. Thick fonts are rendered nicely, although we are starting to see some bleed here, where E and O are, you can see this kind of edge going here, and the hole in the G is getting some bleed from the ink cells. So some level of precision is being lost here. However, when we step down to 50% of blackness, then the situation improves a bit. And I've just scrolled down after doing all of the images, so I'm genuinely seeing this for the first time, and I'm quite interested to see what the results are. And well, it's quite interesting. So we see the standard fonts that Remarkable 2 is trailing behind the Boox 10.3 and Manta, which makes sense because both of these are 300 ppi display panels, so it only makes sense that Remarkable 2 at 227 is simply trailing behind because it has less clarity. This is maintained in the thin fonts, but we can clearly see that difference in legibility and how strong and good the rendering of thin fonts is. As we've seen on the images, Supernote Manta was rendering thin fonts in a much better and clearer way, and the scores definitely reflect that. And despite that false positive skew that I talked about with the 6 point on the thin fonts. As I said, it's a marginal type of a weight, and it doesn't really affect the overall result here. So the Boox 10.3 trails behind Supernote Manta in thin fonts, and of course Remarkable 2 way back. With the thick fonts, all three are going to be predictably rendering at a roughly the same type of quality, because the resolution doesn't play such a big role there. So that means that the final score is that Supernote Manta has the best readability at 25.67, then comes the Boox Go 10.3 at 24.57, and at the last place is Remarkable 2, 21.49. Moving on to contrast and uniformity, where I am measuring the rendering of pure white and pure black content in excellent, average, and poor lighting conditions. And this is a two-portion test with a display analysis, which is what you see here, where shutter speed is adjusted to equalize across lighting conditions. This test serves to judge the quality of the image that is displayed on a device. And the observable is the most important or most influential aspect of this test, because basically this represents what you will be able to see on your device and how you will be able to see the white color and the black color on this device, and consequently the contrast in excellent, average, and poor lighting conditions. And we're starting with the Remarkable 2. And there's a couple of things that I can notice here in the display portion of test, and that is that the canvas display that Remarkable 2 is using is very, very uniform across the white and the black colors, giving it a really, really nice saturated type of an image. Lightness is okay, and the blackness is maintained in a good way on Remarkable 2. Boox Go 10.3 is next, and we can clearly see a difference between it and Remarkable 2, and despite it having a 300 ppi more modern panel, which definitely improves the readability, however, the uniformity and the actual quality of the screen is not really on par with the Remarkable 2, and it is exposed in this display portion of the test, where we can see the granularity across the board, both in black and white color across different lighting conditions. Moving on to the observable portion of the test, and we can see that, well, I'll see how it actually looks on in the final results, but to me, well, let's compare them. But to me, it looks like Boox 10.3 is actually darker, considerably darker than Remarkable 2. Let's put them side by side. Oh yeah, darker across the board. So you can see the white color, the black color, and the contrast here. And we can see that in excellent, Boox 10.3 has 0.66 whiteness, Remarkable 2 0.72. Average lighting conditions 0.44 versus 0.5, and in poor lighting conditions 0.23 versus 0.3. So across the board in all lighting conditions, Remarkable 2 is brighter than the Boox Go 10.3. However, the black color is darker on the Boox Go 10.3 than it is on the Remarkable 2. And that is interesting to see, because the final result here, the C, is the contrast measurement in excellent, average, and poor lighting conditions, and that darkness helps pull the contrast ratio slightly higher across the board in different lighting conditions than on the Remarkable 2. Lastly, we take a look at the Supernote Manta, and we get to see quite okay images. I think that this is okay brightness here. Let's see the observable levels. Yeah, but what's actually quite interesting is that we can clearly see the cell structure of the screen on the Supernote Manta when looking at the white content, and that is something that will affect the uniformity score. The rendering of the black color is good in average and poor lighting conditions. However, in the excellent lighting conditions, that granularity and those imperfections of the cell structure of the screen do pop through, and you get to see this kind of graininess happening. So what do we get to see as the final results? Well, the DVS score is going to basically represent the quality of the image displayed here. And we can see that while they're all three fairly similar, that Remarkable 2 is on the first place, then second place is by Supernote Manta, and finally is Boox Go 10.3. The observable variability score, or the OVS, is the most influential and most important aspect of this test, because this basically tells you what you will be seeing on your device in different lighting conditions. And we can see that that trend remains the same. Remarkable 2 scores highest, then Supernote Manta, and then closely behind it, Boox 10.3. Consistency score in display is fairly close between these three. However, in the observable portion, we can see the uniformity and the quality of the Remarkable 2's, especially black color rendering, is definitely edging it out in the front here. Go 10.3 is behind, and that granularity that we've also seen on the Supernote Manta puts it at the last place. Combined, that means that Remarkable 2 has the best contrast and uniformity, followed by Supernote Manta, which is then closely behind, followed by the Go 10.3. Neither of these devices are color capable, so we're skipping the color accuracy test and moving on to reflectivity. And Remarkable 2 is performing really well with excellent intensity and excellent sharpness reflectivity scores both. Boox Go 10.3 is performing also really well. I did not remember the numbers, but it's going to be interesting to see how do they compare, because they seem to be fairly close. I mean, Remarkable 2 and the Go 10.3, as well as the Supernote Manta. However, we can clearly notice the structure in reflectivity of the Feel Right 2. So it does give you a slightly different type of a character of reflectivity, but as far as intensity and the sharpness, all three seem to be performing really well, and they seem to be close together. So let's see the chart. Well, yeah, no wonder that they seemed close together, because they really are, especially the Remarkable 2 and the Go 10.3. But we can see that the Go 10.3 is ever so slightly better than these two. So Go 10.3 has the best intensity performance, very closely followed by the Supernote Manta, and then again very closely followed by the Remarkable 2. Effectively, all three are basically in a real-world scenario having the same reflection intensities, while the sharpness, there is a difference, and that's that Feel Right 2. And the character of the Feel Right 2, it's simply having more details that you're going to be reacting to and that you're going to kind of see in different lighting conditions than the Remarkable 2 and the Boox Go 10.3, which are for all intents and purposes having basically identical type of sharpness. That means that all three have excellent reflectivity attributes, with Go 10.3 edging out ahead of these two at the first place, closely followed by Remarkable 2, and then Supernote Manta at the last place. Ghosting performance is next, and here I capture a blank page completely deghosted, then flip through 10 pages of text, graphics, or combined text and graphics type of content, and finally ending up on another blank page and capturing the remaining levels of ghosting and comparing that to the first page. And Remarkable 2 has only one refresh mode, the default one, and we can see that there is considerable amount of ghosting here when dealing with text, some graphics here, and also in the combined levels. Pretty much a lot, actually, quite a bit here. Boox Go 10.3 in normal refresh mode performs way better and much cleaner results, although it is also struggling with the combined ghosting here, which is actually the most important performance, because the combined type of content method reflects the most real-world situations that you will be encountering on these devices. In speed mode, we can see that this ghosting performance increases dramatically, and in the A2 mode it becomes actually better than it was on the speed mode. And finally, the X mode is there, but it not only kind of makes the content much fainter and the resolution much worse, but it also increases ghosting across the board as well. Supernote Manta also has one default refresh mode, so one mode of testing for ghosting, and we can see considerable levels of ghosting in all three types of content, and I think that this looks worse than Remarkable 2, absolutely. So let's check out the chart and see what it says. And here we get to see the final result. This is probably something that I'm going to modify as well to include the final score, but also to include different scores, individual scores on a per refresh mode, because I think that's going to give us more insight, or a more complete insight. Here I'm simply averaging out between all of the available refresh modes. And as a consequence of that, we see that the Go 10.3 is scoring the lowest simply because its balanced, I think, refresh mode was performing so badly. It was pulling back the overall performance considerably more. And it actually has more refresh modes that are performing badly than it has refresh modes that are performing well. So the final average is 4571. Then followed by 5982, so much better ghosting performance by the Supernote, but Remarkable 2 edges out in the first place with 6140 as the device that has the best ghosting performance of these three cumulatively. Although what's really important to remember here is that if we were just counting the normal refresh mode or the HD refresh mode of the Go 10.3, it would win this category easily. And here we have surface roughness comparison between these devices. We start with Remarkable 2, which we already know has quite good surface roughness, both performance at 0.835 and the profile curve, which is far more important, although it is fairly uniform, as we can see that the valleys, although they do go a little bit up and down, but more often they're not. They're just kind of just a little bit up and down from this line here, and the frequency and the density of irregularities is very uniform and more dense than what normally would be characterized as a really pleasant paper-like writing feel. But it does have these dulled down valleys, which is one of the aspects that contributes to the pleasantness of the writing feel as well. Moving on to the Boox Go 10.3, and we have a smoother surface roughness at 0.572, so considerably smoother type of feel, but also considerably better profile curve than what we see on the Remarkable 2. It exhibits very similar type of minimal waviness and irregularities of the valleys here, pretty much the same like the Remarkable 2 does. It does edge out Remarkable 2 on two important fronts, and those are the rounded out valleys are more rounded and kind of nicer, and the irregularities are nicer than a Remarkable 2, and far more importantly, that frequency of irregularities, it's way less dense, which allows the pen tip to actually follow and feel these things in a nicer way. And then we move on to the Supernote Manta, which uses its own proprietary Feel Right 2 type of writing surface. And this is, yeah, definitely the reason why Supernote devices feel different, because you can now see it clear as day. Very different, almost like an inverted like type of a thing, because see, this is like Boox Go 10.3 or Remarkable 2. This is Supernote Manta. So we have almost like an inverted type of a profile curve, which is very interesting. But let's start with the surface roughness. This is what I'm always reacting to with the Feel Right 2. It feels slippery, and it is. It's a 0.349 surface roughness. However, where it's actually getting to be quite interesting is in, yeah, the profile curve. So we have very expressive waviness and irregularity of the surface, which is a really important element of the writing feel. The density is okay because we do have these kind of occasional longer type of differences in non-uniformity, and that helps overall writing feel. But what's most interesting is that we actually have sharp valleys and really dull peaks all over the, yeah, the surface of the Feel Right 2. And this combined, I mean, this profile curve, this is why writing on the Supernote Manta or the Nomad feels different than on other devices, because it actually is. And the final score look, well, unsurprising, with Remarkable 2 far ahead of both Supernote Manta, which is dead last, and Boox Go 10.3, somewhere between these two, as far as the surface roughness and paper-like type of writing quality, comfort levels, and experience goes. Next is the refresh time, and on Remarkable 2 we only have one refresh mode, and this test is performed by capturing 480 frames frames per second footage of page flipping from a page that has content to a completely blank page, inverting the content, popping the contrast, and then measuring out the exact frame where the screen settles and has finished updating. And on the Remarkable 2, that looks like this and takes this much time, so we'll eventually get there at 431.68 milliseconds. On the Boox Go 10.3 we have 4 refresh modes, and we start with the normal refresh mode that performs like this. So very, very clean and takes 356.61 milliseconds. So faster than Remarkable 2, noticeably. And then we have the speed refresh mode, which is a bit more ghostier, but a lot more faster at 185.6 milliseconds. A2 mode, which is very strange because it has this distinct type of a pause before everything settles. As you can see, there was like, it starts there, then goes a little bit up and then down, and then kind of monkeying around until finally it settles down at around 260.68 milliseconds. And the X mode kind of ruins the quality of display. And yes, it is fast, but the price that you actually pay is the image degradation that is unacceptable for me, at least. And on the Supernote Manta, we also have only a single refresh mode, the default mode. It looks fairly clean, fairly good, and performs really, really well as well. So that means that the final score for the refresh time, where higher is better, so this is out of a 0 to 100 type of a score metric, we have Boox Go 10.3 performing the best, followed by Supernote Manta and Remarkable 2 trailing at the last place. Writing latency on Remarkable 2 is really, really fast and really, really consistent. So always pretty much bang on type of 20-ish millisecond type of a performance. Boox Go 10.3, not as much. Not only is it slower than the Remarkable 2, but the way that it actually updates the written line is basically in chunks. So it fills in, there's a pause, etc., etc. So that means that the overall perceived uniformity and smoothness of the writing latency is also going to be a bit more negative on the Go 10.3 than it is on the Remarkable 2. However, then Supernote Manta comes to play and basically obliterates both of them, in this case with 16.68 milliseconds of writing latency and a very nice way of updating that written line. And that is exactly what we see in the final score results, where the final results represent the average of 10 runs for each of the devices. So at the dead last place, because these represent millisecond values, average millisecond values of writing latency, where lower is better, as you can see. So we have last place is Boox Go 10.3 at 40 milliseconds or 40.04 milliseconds, then Remarkable 2 at around 26.28 milliseconds, and at the first place is Supernote Manta with 17.52 milliseconds of writing latency. Surface distance is measuring the distance between the surface of the screen and the actual content of the screen. And on Remarkable 2, it's somewhere between 0.8 and 0.9 millimeters, which is definitely a good type of value, but it's far closer to front-lit devices, for example, than it is on other non-front-lit devices. We can clearly see that difference with the Boox Go 10.3, another non-front-lit device, but here it's about 65 to 7, so 0.65 or 0.7 type of surface distance, and Supernote Manta having a very similar performance like the distance like the Remarkable 2, somewhere between 0.8 and 0.9 millimeters. So this chart, I mean, in all honesty, I think that Remarkable 2 and Supernote Manta basically perform the same, with the Boox Go 10.3 having the smallest distance between the screen and the content of the display, making it most immersive out of the three. I don't have the battery test results done on all three of these devices yet, so that will have to wait, but that doesn't really matter because battery test results are not part of the DAF results. So when we're looking at the final DAF score, how do these three devices compare against each other? And it's very, very interesting to see that they are very close to each other, with Supernote Manta ever so slightly. It's a photo finish between Remarkable 2 and Supernote Manta at 53.31, and by just 0.10 of a point, Remarkable 2 is in the second place, and by 2 whole points in this super close race, that's enormous, is the Go 10.3 at the last place. When I'm checking out the e-reader final score, we can see that Supernote Manta does edge ahead. Boox Go 10.3 regains the second place here, and Remarkable 2 goes back to third place. Then we go for the notebook functionalities, and here Remarkable 2 edges in front, with Supernote Manta following closely behind, and then Boox Go 10.3 close behind it. And as a tablet functionality, we get Supernote Manta as the top runner, and Remarkable 2 here, and then Boox Go 10.3. This is a result that I need to re-evaluate, because I think that either my weight for the Google Play app functionality, which is something that's really, really important in this e-tablet category, has not been counted properly, or that the weighting of it is wrong. So I'll have to investigate that a little bit more in depth. But overall, these three devices, they all perform really well, and they all perform really, really close to each other. Well, that was certainly interesting. What I found really, really fascinating in this comparison was the actual surface roughness and the profile of the surface roughness between these three devices. That explained to me why I was not really fully sold with the Remarkable 2, especially when coming from Remarkable 1, which I find way, way better. It helped me understand what is the weird, slippery, not yet non-slippery type of writing feel that I experience when using the Supernote Manta with the Feel Right 2, because it basically has like an inverted type of a surface roughness curve, which, when I think about it, that basically translates into what I am feeling. But it's really, really interesting to, have finally data and even a graph that helps you understand, oh, that's what I was feeling, that's what I was reacting to. And most interestingly for me, it helps me understand why the switch to a much, much smaller and harder nib, like the ceramic nib, produced such a better and more satisfying writing feel on the Boox Go 10.3, simply because it does have enough variability between the peaks and valleys, and enough room that if you're using a pen with a smaller nib, like the ceramic one for the Supernote, for example, that one is at 0.3 millimeters. And we've seen that there are some nooks and crannies and spaces between the variability of the surface roughness of the Boox Go 10.3 that are beyond 0.3 millimeters. And that allows for the tip of the pen to go up and down and basically give you a very satisfying tactile feel. So I'm really, really nerding out here, as you can see. And I'm nerding out here on many levels, because not only does this kind of give me more satisfying results and insights and all of that kind of stuff, but it's also coming from a methodology that didn't exist and something that I created. So it's very satisfying to see, the fruits of your labor come to fruition, shall we say, because it's really, really, really difficult and challenging stuff. But to actually see it come into play and start to yield results that I was hoping that it would, it feels pretty good. I'm really interested to hear from you guys as well. How are you finding this type of content and this type of videos? What are your thoughts on the comparisons between these three devices? And are there some insights or information that was particularly informative or surprising to you from today's video? If you like the work that I do, please like and subscribe, and ding the notification bell in the description below to get notified when new videos come out on my deep guide. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe, stay healthy, and see you in the next video. Bye!